creates lots of ways for us to stretch ourselves, and that takes a little dose of personal development. So you'll find from time to time we're not only sharing great resources specifically to your marketing on shows like this or episodes like this one, but also the great books that we're going to mention are going to help you level up in other areas of life, as well as making you a better marketer.
Yes, and both you and I have long been fans of personal development books, and we do have a couple to share today. And I love this aspect of, especially Suzi, I know with what you do inside of the Her Business Network, the growth zone, the person's own growth zone is one of the most important parts of the process. And I love that you champion that. And I wanted to mention right out of the gate that we have updated our Content Sells reading list to include the new books we're covering in today's episode. And we'll give you the link to download that reading list a little later in the episode. And this is a download I strongly recommend you check out. We've been building this list for years, and it is really one of the best, if we do say so ourselves, business and personal development reading lists around. Many of the books on this list have given Suzi and I massive breakthroughs. They're our favorite books. They're the ones that really made the difference. And it's not just the ones we've been sharing on this episode. There's a big back catalogue of books that we've been reading through our whole lives and careers, and they're just as relevant today as the date they were published.
Right. And even if you've been listening to the show for years and you're like, well, I've got that download, know that we're going to be updating it, and we do every single year. So you'll want to grab yourself a fresh copy. So I want to take a moment also to reiterate what you're saying about the download. And that is, books are such a fantastic way to learn and grow. They've been some of my biggest teachers in all the years I've been in business. They're portable, they're inexpensive. They're a little more expensive than they were, but they're still relatively inexpensive as a tool for learning. And they have entire worlds inside of them that can help you in every way imaginable. And when I look at the list, which has dozens of book recommendations, as Michelle mentioned, it's a really valuable resource for your growth. And we'll give you the instructions on how to get that entirely free download in just a bit.
Suzi, I love what you said there about books having entire worlds inside of them. And it makes me think of a great quote I read from Matt Haig. Now, he is author of one of the favorite books I read this year, The Midnight Library. It's a novel. Now, it's not one of the books on the formal book list or that we're going to talk about in today, but it is a fab holiday read for anybody that wants just a good light novel. But he said this the other day on his Facebook. He said, aren't bookshops just massively strange, sitting there with quiet menace and hidden power, as if they were just a shop and not an entry point to 30,000 universes?
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love that. And I still love a good bookshop, I'll just say.
Yes.
And this year we were in, oh my gosh, where were we? I don't know if it was when we were in Portugal, but we went to this bookstore, which I'll give you the link, Michelle. It's like one of the most Instagrammed bookstores.
Oh, wow.
Just incredible. And there was a lineup, and you had to take a ticket to wait your turn.
Way.
Yeah, you had to wait in turn, and every 15 minutes they allowed so many people into the bookstore, and then others had to come out for you to get in, and you got a little voucher that you could use against, with your ticket value, use against a book. And they had their own imprints, but it's just spectacular. And if I can I'll get you a link and I'll get a photo, because maybe we can put that in the show notes.
Yes.
It's really quite incredible. Yeah,
let's get that in the show notes.
For Michelle. Okay.
Yes, I love bookstores. They do feel like these magical portals into other worlds. And, I often wander around. I think, where is my portal today? Which book am I going to grab today? Sometimes I walk in with a book in mind, and other times it sort of jumps off the shelf at me. But I live in the country, and so there aren't that many bookshops around, especially not one you have to take a ticket to get into.
And wait your turn. Yeah, and so if ever I find myself near a bookstore, I will go in, and I rarely leave without something. If it's not a book, or if it's not a journal or something, I will buy something to support the bookstore, because I'm just so grateful to see them there. But these days I do tend to buy a lot of my books online. What about you?
Yeah, because I live in the country, I do, it is convenient, and I do, love to just get it. Like, sometimes I just need a book right now, today, because I need to read something because I'm prepping for something. But there is a really great bookstore about an hour away from where I live in kind of the main shopping, like more metropolitan shopping area. And so thankfully that one bookstore is fantastic. It is giant and fabulous literary collection and business collection. So whenever I am near it, I do go in, like you said, and, I buy a bunch of books to support them because I want them to stay open. And something I'm doing a lot more of, and I think we talked about this in the last couple of episodes on this topic over the last couple of years. I've continued my love of audiobooks this year, and I've listened to a ton of books on Audible. So maybe instead of buying the paper book, I am getting the Audible. I'm curious, what's your balance of reading paper books and listening to audiobooks been like this year?
It depends. Like if I'm reading a book for business and perhaps it's a book club book or I'm going to be teaching about it, then I will get it in print, on Audible and on Kindle because I'm absorbing it every different way. If it's, I love Audible, but I don't commute anymore. And so I actually find it harder to find those times to listen. I will listen a little bit in bed and I'll read a bit of Kindle. But I have a stack of books next to my bed. I've been buying paper books because, while this is the first episode of the year, to be really transparent, we're recording this at the end of December and I know I'm about to have a couple of weeks where I can actually get into some paper books and I do want them to be paper. I just want to be sitting on the deck and absorbing a book. And so it's still a bit of all of them, but I will, if I need it right now, I will probably get the Audible. But, Amazon delivers to me sometimes same day, sometimes next day. So I have all the options.
to live in a CBD area for all of those delivery benefits. I'm scrambling right now as you're talking because I just remembered I saw some research the other day that actually supported the fact that we comprehend more reading a paper book than off a screen. And so, and I think the combination, like you said, sometimes you're listening to a book and reading the book. And I think that definitely makes a difference to me too. But I don't know how you're listening to audiobooks in bed. I just go to sleep when I do that. So big kudos to you for that. I think when we did this episode last year, I was in a bit of a reading funk. I had done some really heavy duty projects and written a lot too. And I think I was just over, like at the end of the day, I did not want to read more words. And so I remember last year kind of feeling like, I didn't really read that many books that I've got to bring to the table here. But this year, I don't know what happened. It was like the switch went on. I have read a ton of books this year. And sometimes it's like that, isn't it? We can sort of go in cycles. But this year, especially the second half of this year, I have had a voracious appetite for books and I have been loving it, so much so that it was really hard to make a short list.
Yes, but we did make a short list and that is what we are sharing with you today. So these aren't all the books that we read, but these are, we picked 3 books each that we wanted to share with you as part of this episode of the best books for content marketers. And I'll kick things off with a book named The One Thing. It's by Keller Williams and David Keller, and Jay Papasan. David Keller is part of Keller Williams, one of the largest real estate companies in the world. The book is called The One Thing, and this was actually a book club book for our members, and it's one that members keep coming back to because its message is so important to all parts of business, and it's especially important to our marketing. And earlier this year, I had the opportunity to meet one of the authors while attending a mastermind that I belong to. We were in Austin, Texas, and he was the guest speaker, and it inspired me to revisit The One Thing, the book, which I read many, many years ago. And the book is about the power of focus in achieving extraordinary results, which is particularly relevant, I think, for us as women business owners as we navigate the demands of marketing our business along all the other responsibilities. And last month, I invited the author on one of our quarterly member strategy meetings, and it was I don't know, it's just so freaking amazing to have him there and having speak directly to her business community and encourage them to really identify their one thing, the singular activity that if focused on makes everything else easier or unnecessary, which is the key question that he asks in the book. And the actual question is, what is the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? And it is a simple question, but it's so much harder to just choose the one thing because we think, oh my God, I'm so busy. There's so many things for me to do. But this definition of what a priority really is It's singular, it's a game changer, and it can be for you too as it's applied to your content marketing. So, what could that mean for you? It could mean narrowing your marketing to a single overarching strategy this year. It could be a singular ideal client rather than trying to be everything to everyone. It could be a singular platform that's going to deliver the highest return on investment instead of trying to be everywhere all at once. Because we don't need to be trying every marketing strategy. We often need to do less and be more narrowly focused in our efforts in order to get the great results that we want. And as we look out at the year with our big goals, this is a great reminder to focus on what, by doing it, makes everything else simpler. Because here's what I've noticed, Michelle, even though the women in our community, they want to grow, they also want to streamline things. They want a simpler life. And so by honing in on the most impactful actions, we can avoid getting overwhelmed or burned out, and we can create a much clearer path to our goals. And another tip in the book that I think is really useful in this conversation is the author's advice to time block for priority tasks. And while the idea of time blocking might not be new, it can really change how productive you feel. So could you apply dedicated uninterrupted time to activities like creating high quality content, or mapping out your marketing funnel, or engaging with your audience, or optimizing something? So rather than approaching your marketing in an ad hoc way, could you have these dedicated time blocks where you get the deep work done? And so the book, The One Thing, is a reminder that doing less but doing it well can really lead to the growth that you might be looking for. So I highly recommend you pick up a copy.
Thank you for just bringing that book back to my consciousness. It is such an important book. In fact, I was just looking at some of the summary notes from that the other day, because we do find ourselves constantly saying to the women that we help and support, hey, narrow that focus in. What would be the one thing? We can't do all the things. So that's such a great book, such a great recommendation. And Suzi, can I just take a minute just to acknowledge you and applaud you, because you said at the start, and you kind of, maybe somebody missed it or not, but you mentioned that this is the book club book. And, a couple of times a year, 2 or 3 times a year, I think it is, you send physical books to the members of the HerBusiness Network. And I just love that about you, that you've got this deep love for books. You know how important they are. You handpick just like the most kick-ass books. And then you get your community, you get those books in their hands, and they get a chance to talk about them with each other, and to sort of, build on the ideas in the book and have the ideas reinforced for them. It's such a powerful thing to do. So I just wanted to say thank you for being just a force for good in this world. Very good.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you. I love it. Thank you.
Yeah. And then, bonus points, she brings the authors to them, and it gets the authors speaking to them as well. I just love it. So a book that I really loved reading this year is a book called The Creative Act, A Way of Being. And it's by a guy called Rick Rubin. And this book was actually referred to me by Ryan Levesque, is somebody that, mutual friend of both Suzi and mine. He's been a client of mine for a long time, and he had just started reading it, and we were on a call, and he said, I'm reading this great book. And so I bought the Audible version, and I was listening. I had to drive to Sydney. So it was a 6-hour drive. I listened to the book the whole way there. I got there. I was like, get me to a bookstore. I have to have the physical copy of this. And as I'm in the bookstore, it's such a funny story. As I'm in the bookstore, I get a text from Ryan, like literally as the woman is putting the book into the bag. And he says, I know you're listening to the audiobook, but I really think you'll benefit from having the physical copy. And I just got to take a picture of the girl putting it in the bag. And then I got my daughter to take a picture of me outside the bookshop with this book in my hand. And I just texted it to him to say, great minds think alike. And it is great to read a book with a friend. So that's why I love your book club. I'm in some book clubs as well, but even just one other buddy, and we're working on some creative projects together. So it's really good to have that shared language of a book, and we're sharing notes with each other. But back to the book, Rick Rubin is a music producer who founded Def Jam Records. It's one of the most important hip-hop labels of the 1980s. This guy has won 9 Grammy Awards, and he's worked with artists like Red Hot Chili Peppers, The Strokes, Adele, Run DMC, and, he's been in a few creative situations. Seeing my son who's in a band and watching them magic up and create up from nothing songs, I know what a kind of seminally creative act it is. And this book, The Creative Act, is a wonderful insight into what Rick has discovered over all those years about tapping into creativity with mindfulness, humility, and authenticity. Now, he hardly mentions the recording industry at all in the book. Actually, that would be the one note I would give him, to tell more stories from the recording industry to demonstrate his points. But it is a more universal book, and so maybe he did that deliberately, because the principles he's talking about transcend, music producing.
Right.
So you don't have to be a music producer to listen to this book. Anybody that's creating anything, and as content creators, we're creating a lot of stuff. What he's talking about applies to us. And literally every page of the book, the physical copy of the book that I got, Susie, has underlines on it.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, so I listened to the audio first, then I went back through it with the pen, and there were just ridiculous amounts of insights. But three I wanted to share. The first is this idea that he talks about: the artist is a vessel. That's vessel, Vessel. And he suggests that creators are not the source of ideas, but vessels through which ideas pass. Creativity, he says, is about being open and present to catch these ideas when they flow. And I'm just getting goosey even saying those words out loud, because I have felt that so deeply in my being. And maybe you felt that as you're listening. And Susie, maybe you felt that. Like, I know I have. And often when I've been able to catch those ideas as they come, it's very often my best work. Have you had that feeling, Susie, of like something kind of comes through you?
Yes, and if you can catch it, like you said, and recognize and be listening for that, it just also reminds me about the big magic. There's something about that that's very similar to Elizabeth Gilbert's Big Magic. Yeah.
Yeah, she actually does. She mentions in the book, and also I think it's in her TED Talk, she's talking about the poet, and her name is just slipping out of my hands right now. But she talks about this poet who sees herself as a vessel, and that the poems come through her. And if she doesn't grab the poem as it's coming through her, it leaves. And there's this story of this poet being out in the paddock somewhere, and a poem coming, and she runs at full pelt back to the house to grab a pen. And she actually wrote, she says she grabbed the poem by the tail, which I think is so poetic, and wrote the poem in reverse because she'd sort of pulled it back into herself, which I think, oh my God, I just love that. But, as we think about this idea, I know that's a big kind of metaphysical concept, but let's bring it back to content marketing. How can you think of yourself as a conduit, as a vessel for ideas to pass through you that are related to your audience's needs and desires? How do you stay attuned to what they're asking for in conversations or in comments on social media or in trends? So instead of forcing ideas, how can you kind of just get into the flow and be a vessel? As if you immerse yourself in your audience and their challenges and their aspirations, I think that will guide you and put you in the way of these ideas that want to flow through you. And instead of it being a struggle, what might it look like if you were in flow and doing your best work? So I love this idea of the artist is a vessel. That was the first point from Rick Rubin's book. The second was start with a feeling. And Rubin says he often begins his creative projects with a feeling rather than a fully formed idea. He asks, what do you want your audience to feel? And he says, this shapes everything else. And I love that as a starting point. What do I want my audience to feel? So before creating a campaign or a piece of content, maybe you can borrow from Rick and ask, what emotional response am I aiming to evoke? What do I want the person thinking about buying a swimming pool to feel when they read this? Or what do I want the woman dealing with a teenager with depression to feel when she sees this video? So whether it's inspiration or curiosity or trust, letting emotion guide your strategy definitely creates more impactful content. And I know when I listen to a piece of music that makes me feel something, I want to listen to it again. I want to go and get it on Spotify. I want to follow that artist on Instagram. And that's how we can most effectively reach people. And he really understands this. And then the third point was, I just thought this was a cool distinction, Susie. He talks about the experimenter and the finisher. And he says many artists lean toward one of two categories, experimenters or finishers. Now, experimenters, as the name says, they like dreaming, they like play, they like experimenting, they come up with lots of different ideas, but they find it difficult to release their work. He says finishers are kind of the mirror image of that. They move quickly to the end point, quickly to concluding and producing and releasing their work. And I think it can be a bit for us as content marketers and really all creators, I think. And maybe as you're listening to this, you go, oh, I can see I'm an experimenter or, oh, I'm a finisher. And he suggests that both can benefit from borrowing from the other. And I love this idea of borrowing. I don't have to change who I am. I can just borrow something from somebody else, right? And he says finishers could take more time in the early ideation phase, experimenting with other perspectives. So if you're a finisher, you just rush to getting it done. How might you build a bit of a pause in the ideation phase or deliberately, even though it might feel painful, try experimenting with some other perspectives or mediums even. And experimenters can take an aspect of the work right through to completion. So if you're struggling getting the whole thing done, what piece of it could you take through to completion? And his example, one of the rare examples that he gives of the recording industry, he said let's say you're an artist struggling to make an album of 10 songs and you're just stuck in that experimentation. Just take the 2 songs that you're clearest about all the way through to completion, like fully mixed and ready to go. And then you can just work on 1 more. He said it's easier to go from 2 to 3, even if you're not clear on 3. Like if you've taken 2 of them to completion, it gets you into momentum. And I think sometimes you might be clear on, the social post for something and not the email sequence. Well, just get the social post done and then go back to the email. Or one email, the launch email is clear and the rest are not so clear. Just take that first email all the way through to completion. I thought it was such a helpful point. And just because it was so hard to choose, Suzi, I'm going to sneak in a bonus 4th point. And he talks about temporary rules. And I love this because much of creation is letting go of rules, like working outside the box. But he says there's a place for imposing rules as a tool to help with your creative process. And I love the idea they're just temporary. That makes it feel so much more like I can do that. And I find this constraint idea to be true as well. Trying to create without constraints, like you can create anything you want, is actually hard. It's helpful to see limitations as opportunities. And he talks about this painter, Yves Klein, who limited his color palette to just 1 color. Like he deliberately chose this constraint. I'm just going to paint with colors of blue. And what that led to was he discovered a blue that had never been used before. He actually fabricated a new color. And so as a content marketer, what creative limitations might you put on a project? Like maybe I'm going to do everything only on an iPhone, or I'm going to do it all without makeup, or I'm going to do it all by a certain time, or I'm going to double down on just one channel. And Ruben calls this setting a palette for each project. And he says there are no good rules or bad rules, only rules that fit the situation and serve the art.
So good. It's in my Amazon cart as we speak. I'm just not sure. Am I going to get the hardcover? It doesn't seem to be in a paperback. And I do have an Audible subscription. You got the hardcover?
Yeah. It's beautiful. And it's simple and elegant. And it's got like a linen cloth cover. Like it's old school. It's really lovely.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. Thank you for the recommendation. I love that. My next book was part of our Her Business book club series this year as well. And what I love about the book club series is it kind of forces me to read, even when I'm like, I'm too busy. It's like, I need a book for the community. So this book is by Adam Grant, who has a huge following out there. The book is called Hidden Potential. And what I liked about this book is it really challenges conventional notions of talent being the key to our success. And he really emphasizes the role that effort and environment and adaptability can play in unlocking our success. And there's wonderful stories of people from very different backgrounds who succeeded kind of against the odds, against not having the education, not having the skill, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the truth about this book is I have only half read it, but I got to the point in the book where I went, I think I absolutely just got why I'm reading this book, and I was done. And this is a permission that a friend of mine, Jane, gave me many years ago when I remember her saying, sometimes she'll be in a movie and she'll like, yeah, I'm done. And she'll leave the movie. I'm like, what? You get up in the middle of the movie. What, did you not like it? She said, no, I just got what I got. I got why I was watching it and I was complete with it. And I've taken that on. It's like, and I will leave a theatre production, I will leave a movie, I will leave a book if I feel like, okay, I've gotten what I needed to get from it, and going any further doesn't feel right. So there's some permission there, people.
I love it.
So for women business owners, especially those looking to grow through content marketing, Adam Grant's message is really clear, and that it's not just about our innate ability. And each of us has innate abilities. It's about really creating systems and structures that foster growth and creativity, really creating conditions around us that foster our growth and creativity. And I love this so much as someone who doesn't come from an illustrious academic background, but has learned through trial and error from my very first business at age 27, developed myself on, again and again and again every year, and reinvented myself multiple times. And this is a crucial insight, I think, for marketing, where strategies like whether it's blogging or social media or email campaigns, they're skills that can be developed and they can be refined over time. So even if right now marketing or parts of marketing seem like this great mystery to you, know that you can learn it, and that you can learn anything you need to learn to be a stronger, more capable business owner. And the book also highlights the importance of feedback loops and learning from failure, both critical components for effective marketing. And that idea is what makes, for example, our mastermind or our accountability groups inside of Her Business make so much sense. We have a feedback loop. We have a way to put our work out there and have it come back to us through someone else's eyes. And that allows us to make progress. And the author also encourages us to embrace a mindset of experimentation, a little like the author of the book that you just spoke about. So trying out different content strategies, analyzing the results, iterating to continue to improve. And that aligns with what I consider and what I'm sure Michelle considers to be essential for us to make progress over time. And when we look at marketing challenges, as opportunities for growth, we can really break free from having to get it perfectly right and be more willing to take some calculated risks. And in that process, we get to uncover hidden potential in our audience, in ourselves, in our campaigns, in our businesses. Now, Adam Grant also speaks about cultivating a growth culture and how that can unleash both personal and organizational potential, right, regardless of the size of your business. So for women running businesses, this translates to building an environment, whether it's through your team, your networks, or the tools you use, that really supports consistent learning and development of yourself and your business skills and that of your team, which is exactly what being a part of the Her Business world is, and why we thrive on creative and love creating a supportive community for you, where those conditions are perfect for your growth. That's our growth culture. And we create an environment where you can truly uncover your hidden potential. So go ahead and check that out. As I said, Adam Grant has a huge following. This is a bestseller. You might want to follow him on the socials, which I think, Michelle, you do.
I do. I just love this guy. Firstly, I love this book, which I read in the physical copy. Thanks to you, Suzi Dafnis. You sent me a copy of this book, and which I loved. And I do 100% back up your comment about recommending this to anyone that wants to check out more about it. But do follow him on socials. I absolutely love, he's just got the knack. He's kind of like Seth Godin. He's got the knack of just dropping these like mic drop ideas in like one,